Good afternoon. My name is Chris Adam with Youth Pledge for Employers, and I'm delighted to be joined by James Steele from Keeler Recruitment. Hello there, James.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Yes, I'm not too bad. And in case we forget which organisation you're from, you've got it proudly, emblazoned behind you.
Indeed. Keeler Recruitment. Yeah. So, pleasure to come on and have a chat with you about us.
No, I appreciate it. And please, my start of a 10 question, I guess, has to be, can you tell us about Keeler Recruitment and what it is you do?
Yeah, cool. So, Keeler Recruitment, we were set up, or our manager set us up 4 years ago after a long term in the world of corporate recruitment. He decided to branch off onto his own. I don't think and he'll openly admit, he never had the vision that it was going to turn into what it is now. But now there's a strong team of us. We work solely on accountancy and finance recruitment opportunities across Norfolk only, and I think that's quite important to us that we support kind of local only. Try not to spread ourselves too thin, and make sure that we're giving the best service to our clients and candidates.
You touched on it there, and that's brilliant to hear. Sort of, if you can then compare yourselves to, as you say, to other recruitment organisations who maybe target bigger areas or different fields, sort of, how does it differ being, as you say, in an agency where you focus on a specific sector and specific areas in comparison to maybe being in another one that might target a variety of different areas and sectors?
Yeah, I think for me the difference is, and I'm sure my colleagues would agree, the difference is that what it does, it gives us a really good kind of handle and grip on our market and our area of kind of expertise, as we call it, because that way we're focused on an area of clients. Obviously, there are lots of big businesses and small businesses across Norfolk. So it allows us to have a better understanding of clients and candidates. So, I can be in the office and throw out a name. I've been within the company now for 18 months. Prior to that, I was in contract recruitment for 10 years within the oil and gas industry. So, and that was international. So at no point I knew kind of most of the candidates I was dealing with, but because it was so broad, you never really, I could throw a name out there and there's a chance someone might know, but the difference being within our team, and because of all of our backgrounds of working in that area, I can throw a name out and they'll go, oh yeah, I placed him 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And Mark is fantastic for kind of remembering people as well. So he's, everyone who knows Mark will always remember him, and likewise. So never short of having an understanding of who the candidates are, what they're like as people as well. And I think that's such a big thing in the world of recruitment now is yes, obviously the basics are that you find someone who can do the job, but team fit and cultural fit and all of them kind of buzzwords are so important now to, even for us. I mean, Mark's very particular about who he brings into our team. So I think that's such an important thing in recruitment now, is making sure that you're finding the right personalities to go into businesses, because as a perm recruiter, the most important thing for us is that we can provide the right person to the right client and vice versa, and that we're setting up long-term kind of placements, and then relationships will build over the time because we've paired up the right business with candidate.
I think it's really interesting you mentioned that, because I think if we look at maybe the preconceptions that people have of the recruitment industry, I think sort of sometimes people get bogged down in the deadlines, the fast-paced environment, the competitive nature of it, and sometimes it can actually come across as a sort of a bit of a faceless, less personable industry. So it's actually really sort of interesting to hear how you say that actually, as a very core concept and selling point, as I say, you're all about, as I say, the right person, who they are, and the right match.
100%. And I think we try and do our utmost. I mean, clients and candidates, we will try and obviously meet them in person, either here on site, or we'll go to visit on a business front. We'll go to their office to meet them and try and really break down what it is and who it is they're looking for. Because then when we're meeting the candidates, and again, either if we can't meet them in person face to face, then we'll arrange a Teams call, because I think again that opens up different layers that you don't get from looking at a CV. And the same goes the other way. And I say this to candidates all the time, that I can send you a job spec. I can email a job spec out to 30 candidates. That doesn't actually tell you the whole gist of the job, and again,
Yeah.
going back to, and it's the same both ways. You should never kind of, it's the old saying, never judge a book by its cover. It's the same with a CV and a job spec. Until you actually break down and get to know that person, and also find out kind of what the team's like that this job sits in. I think there's certain elements to it that can really add more layers to either a person or a job. So again, I think that personable touch again is really important to us, because if I speak to a candidate or a client who's looking for A, B, and C, and then I don't provide them with them basics, that they're the fundamentals of what they're looking for, then I'm not doing my job properly. So yeah, again, I think that's so important that, if you tell me you're looking for a part-time job with flexible working hours because of childcare arrangements, and then I send you a full-time job that is fixed in the office, I'm not listening to you. So
Yeah.
I think that's so important.
No, that's really interesting and a valuable insight there, and I appreciate that. And you actually touched a little bit on there about the process as a whole, and I was wondering if we could do this as one question. If you had to talk about maybe the process, so let's imagine, as you say, an organisation comes to you with a role they need filling. If you could talk to us a little bit about the process there, and actually then how the different members of your team that you've also sort of mentioned, how what part they play in sort of the journey, as you say, from sort of getting candidate into the organisation to fill the role.
Yeah, so obviously if we have a client come to us with a requirement, then if it's a new client, then first of all, establishing what the job is. We work slightly differently to other agencies in that we work on different levels of jobs. So we cover practice, so accountancy practice roles. We can cover public sector and industry and commerce. So we cover all different sectors, and then on the different levels of job, that's kind of where we all come into play within the team. So we have two members of the team who work on our kind of entry level to, that could be an accounts assistant or a trainee accountant, that sort of level. Then we move up into the kind of mid to senior level, which is where myself and my colleague Reeve are working. And then we have the top level roles from kind of finance manager upwards, anything up to an FD or a CFO. So all the top level positions are taken care of. But obviously there's less of them and more kind of at the entry level and kind of account system. So it's a good blend of how we cover the jobs. And we all support each other on that, and hopefully the way that we do work is that it all blends through, so the people that are being placed on the kind of lower levels eventually 2 or 3 years down the line will end up coming back to us because of such a top quality service we provided, and we'll place them again later down the line, hopefully. But going back to your question, so once we've established who it is, then it's about kind of seeing if we can arrange a meeting first and foremost to kind of talk through the position and come and see what the workplace is like, see what the environment is like, because accountancy professionals, they can be very they can be pigeonholed quite easily, and that's not a disrespect to them, because some of them like to be kind of head down, cracking on and dealing with the numbers, and there's others that tend to want to have that exposure of managing the whole process and going into kind of analyst positions and things like that. So so again, I think once you go into an environment and see what that workplace is like, and you get a feel for the place, and again for the people that you're talking to who are potentially going to be their line managers and peers and so forth. So once we've got kind of down to the basics of what it is they're looking for, if there's any flexibility on, again, I go back to that point, when you read a job spec, everything's there in black and white, but there's a grey area, which is, well, would you accept someone part-time? Well, actually we would. So then again, that opens it up to candidates that we speak to are saying, I'm only looking for 3 or 4 days a week working. So again, it's opening up them really basic questions, and then going the other side, and then we start the process of obviously contacting people. Now, We've got our own database of candidates who have registered to be supported by us. So we've got search capabilities on there to find people. There'll be instantly, what we like to do is when we go to a candidate, when we go to visit a client, we like to take kind of 3 to 5 CVs of candidates we instantly think would be a good option to at least consider, and to almost say to them, well, this is the type of candidate that we do have. These ones that I've recently spoken to and I know are available at, you know, immediately in a month's time, however long. So we can almost start the ball rolling pretty early on, and they might be able to pick out a few things that they like about a candidate and some things that potentially are missing, that they're looking for. And then again, that just helps us try and find and pin down what is the right candidate they're looking for. We'd also, so that with recruitment, there's a proactive approach, and then there's a reactive approach, and obviously first and foremost is picking up the phone. I think that's one thing. You know, it's very easy to ping an email out to 50 candidates on the database and hope that you get some bites, but I think the important thing is, because picking up the phone and finding out what Joe Bloggs is doing, you know, might actually lead to more opportunities. You know, there's never a bad conversation, even if it's someone saying I don't know, because that person might also know someone. So, you know, there's always a chance. So picking up the phone, we'd get the jobs advertised. We use multiple job boards, where our ads are distributed to, and yeah, that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. Then we move into, with the interested ones, getting their CVs formatted onto our templates, and then getting them across to our clients, and trying to sell them in the best way. I hate to say it that way, because we're not obviously selling people, but the main point being that we want to, you know, make them look as good as what they are and show them off in their best way, and hopefully we get that from the conversations and the relationships that we build.
No, thank you. That's a really in-depth look at the process, and it sort of takes a lot of the sort of mist away, as we said earlier, sort of around recruitment, to actually sort of, you know, to learn what's going through your head, what's going through your client's head, as you say, and the process you go through. And you sort of touched a little bit there on sort of, you know, as you say, the willingness to pick up a phone, and maybe hinted at some of the skills that be required. I mean, from your experiences, as say, having been in the industry, what are the sort of soft skills that you know, someone going into recruitment needs?
Oh, wow. I think the important thing is you need to be a good listener first and foremost. You know, you need to be able to take in that information and also have the confidence to be able to pick up the phone. I mean, people don't realise. I think certainly I remember when 15 years ago when I went into recruitment, it's quite nerve-wracking picking up a phone and trying to sell a job. I'm not an accountancy professional, so you know, the important thing is that you need to have an understanding of what that job entails, and the industry that you're working in. I mean, it was a big jump for me to move from oil and gas into accountancy and finance, whereas, you know, again, I'm not an engineer, I've never worked on an oil rig, but again, you pick up, and again, as long as you're asking the right questions, and I think that's another thing, never be afraid, if you are getting into it, to ask a question, and find out, do a bit of digging, do a bit of research, so that you've got the best understanding. Because, you know, the candidates that we're speaking to are obviously, they're the ones that are the professionals within this, so they know what the job's about. But I think the key thing for us is to make sure that we don't leave any kind of stones unturned as such, and making sure that we're getting all the information from the client, including the variables, you know, what flexibility there is. And then again, just it's as I say, I think you're almost taking some sort of sales skills into the role, because you know you have got to sell a job to a candidate, and then on the flip side, sell a candidate to the client. So yes, there's there's an element of salesmanness, which I guess goes along with the reputation that recruiters get. But I think if you've got a personable approach to it and try not to be too salesy, then you'll do well.
No, that's a really useful insight, and actually, as I say, it's interesting to hear sort of, as you say, compared against the sort of maybe the view from the outside, what the view of someone from the inside is, on what you do. And you actually sort of hinted a little bit at that there. We were talking about, as you say, maybe people think it's a bit of a salesman type environment, quite driven, quite deadline orientated. If you had to sort of summarize for me, what the good days look like in recruitment and what the challenging days look like in recruitment, how would you define those two?
Oh, the recruitment is certainly in this type of perm recruitment. The highs and lows are vast. I think the important thing that Mark has always stressed to us is that we try not to let the highs affect us too much, and the same with the lows. Just try and keep a kind of a steady go on it, because yes, the highs in recruitment are obviously when we get to that moment when you've placed someone. I mean, the first placement I made when I joined here was fantastic, and I remember telling the guy on the phone that he'd got this job, and I could hear his wife screaming in the background, and that for me is something I'd never experienced in contract recruitment, because they're used to changing jobs every 6 months, every 12 months, so you never had that. It was just another job. Whereas this, you do feel like you're changing someone's life potentially, because it's such a huge decision. Equally, the lows are, certainly in recruitment, is when we're talking to a candidate, we feel like we're really getting somewhere, and then all of a sudden they just fall off the edge of the earth and we don't hear from them, and they're ghosting us. So it's, you feel like you're, again, because it's your time and your effort that you're putting in to build that relationship, and then all of a sudden for it to just go. Equally, because of the way the market is, certainly in our industry at the moment, there are lots of jobs and not as many candidates who are looking. So when we have a candidate, we know that our job that we're telling them about probably isn't going to be the only one they're discussing, and it may be with other agents, it may be direct. So it can be a real kicker when we lose a candidate out to another job. But equally, I think my tact with that has always been that it's down to the candidate. I can only take it so far. What I'm in control of is putting that person's CV into a job that I think would be a good fit for them. Ultimately, the decision is at the end. I can only control that the part all up until that, and it's the same from the client side as well. I can't tell a client this is what you must do. It's down to it's their decision at the end of the day. And I think I know, having moved jobs in the past, that it's got to be right for you. And I always try to explain that to candidates, that it's got, as long as you're happy, then nothing else matters to me.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really nice note to sort of take away from it, as you say, and it's actually, as I say, just sort of so refreshing and breaks a lot of stereotypes I think about the industry. That is your core focus. As I say, some of the sort of things that get sort of thrown at the front of any just recruitment job advert are sort of earning potential, as I say, sort of fast-paced environments, KPIs, all these kind of things. Or actually, as I say, what you're saying there is not something that you see, as I say, on a recruitment advert post. It's the fact that actually, as you say, we're looking for someone who can connect with people, help them make the right decision, as I say, match them with the perfect organization as well. And as I say, it's refreshing to hear that, because I think that gets lost a little bit sometimes, as I say, in the other parts of the job.
Yeah, definitely. Like I say, I think I probably had the same perception of recruiters in the past, and and that was even when I was working more on an internal recruitment position. But we're trying to break the stereotype as such within our business, and I think from the relationships we have with clients and the feedback that we get from them and candidates is really positive. So we try and do a lot more outside of recruitment as well, to give back to people within the industry. So yeah, I think as long as we keep doing that, we're sending the right message out.
And you talked about people within the industry there. Imagine we had someone who was looking to get in the industry. So let's imagine you have someone, you say a 17, 18-year-old applying for a sort of entry level, role with yourselves. What kind of things do you want to see in, whether it's their bio about themselves, or maybe the bit of work experience they've got, or their hobbies, or those kind of things? What kind of things are you looking for which will make you think actually, you'd really be a good fit and hit the ground running at Keeler?
Well, I think if they were looking to, sorry, is this to get into recruitment or into finance?
Into recruitment, I should say.
Into recruitment. I think, yeah, the things I'd be looking for is that kind of driven approach. I think you need to have thick skin a lot of the time in recruitment. I think not that someone's going to necessarily put them words on their own CV or bio, but I think you've got to be able to roll with the punches a little bit in recruitment, because sometimes, like I said, it's very up and down. You can have really good spell, where you're placing people. It's a bit of a snowball effect. You can really get going, then all of a sudden it can just literally be wiped out, and you can go through a bit of a bad spell. But I think the fundamentals of it is that, and this is something we all try and stick to, is that we make sure we keep doing the basics, because I think if you're trying to chase the money as such, then that's when you take your eye off of what the fundamentals of our job is. So again, I think what we would look for in the right person is someone who's willing to go above and beyond, thinking outside the box. How could I look at approaching people in a different way? I've learned so much in 18 months here than I hadn't done in kind of the 12 years prior to that in my recruitment career. So again, I think and being open to ideas, and being open-minded as such. I think, again, communication skills are important. I think, like I said before, being confident enough to pick up the phone and ask a question and just have a chat, really. I mean, that's one thing Michael said. There's any phone call that we make to a client or a candidate could lead to something. It might not always, and 9 times out of 10 it probably doesn't, but there's always the chance that one phone call, as I say, could be someone that you haven't spoken to before, and all of a sudden they're not looking, but actually I know my business that I'm working for are looking for a management accountant or whatever that role is. Oh, this is my manager's number, give him and it can just lead to one thing to another. So again, I think having that confidence and drive to go and do that.
That's a really useful insight, and I appreciate that. And it actually leads me quite when I was on to my last question, as you're talking about sort of the kind of things you'd be looking for in sort of maybe a young person coming into work in recruitment. And all of the employers I've spoken to have asked this question too, which is now, James, if we could go back in time, and you mentioned you could speak to sort of 17, 18-year-old James, you're about to, as I say, sort of go out and whether you want to speak to him or not, and you're about to go out and start your career journey based on sort of maybe the successes you've had, mistakes you've made, things that you've learned. What's the one piece of career advice you would give to your younger self?
Good question. Do you know what? Again, going back to one of my points, I think it is that confidence that maybe it's changed a bit now, but I think going back to the young years, there was very much a hierarchy kind of scenario. I'm probably going back 17 to 20 years ago for me, so there was maybe an element of fear of speaking to people higher up, and I think, again, at the end of the day, we're all human beings at the end of the day. So I think you can have them conversations and ask questions and try and explore more. I think with recruitment on that side, I think for me it's quite different, because my career in kind of corporate recruitment, if we call it that, has, as I say, only been kind of 18 years. I'm pleased I've got into it when I did, because I think I had a lot of transferable skills, and I know Mark will kind of say much the same. So working in internal recruitment is very different, where the opportunities are coming in, you service a contract, whereas this, you have to do a bit more searching. I would have probably liked to have tried a bit of this recruitment maybe a bit earlier in my career, but no, I'm quite content with where I've got to, and I think it's been a bit of a journey, but I'm here. I enjoy the people that I work with, and thankfully, touch wood, I've had that in all the roles that I've had leading to where I am today. And I think all that experience has actually only helped me settle and do as well as I have. And I think when I joined here, I had that kind of moment where the opportunity arrived, and and I thought I needed that fresh challenge, especially after COVID and everything. So yeah, I think it came at the right time, and it's certainly living up to what I hoped it would.